Hello, everyone. I'm Janet Salmons, and I'm happy to be joined today by Trena Paulus. And we'd like to talk a little bit about our new books. I should say the new editions of our books. And as you can see, the titles are somewhat similar. We're both interested in online and technology enhanced research, but we feel that these books are companion books that complement one another. And so we'd like to tell you a little bit about them. Trena?
Yes, thank you so much for the invitation. I think this is a great opportunity to compare and contrast. And I know that as I was looking through your book, there's a lot of additional features and very complementary material that I thought, wow, I would love to teach a class where the students had both books side by side. So I'm really looking forward to exploring that today with you.
Well, let's just talk a little bit about what's different in these new editions. I completely updated the edition of doing qualitative research online, although in some ways I felt that, very little had changed. It's kind of everything has changed, but nothing has changed. I mean, we still um, communicate by either written text-based forms or visual forms, whether we're using a smaller, faster device than we may have been using when I wrote the first edition. But nevertheless, I feel that, there are, many kind of new opportunities for doing online research that I wanted to talk about in this new book, and some aspects that I felt I wanted to give more attention to. I did expand quite a bit the sections about researchers' roles and positionality and how that influences your ability to build credibility with either participants or gatekeepers or others who need to understand your study. More about sampling and recruiting participants, or in selecting the extant material that you want to use. I also gave more attention to creative and experiential methods in this text. And I drew on updated research and interviewed a number of researchers who are currently using these kinds of approaches to, get an understanding of what, kinds of things they're doing and the dilemmas that they're facing. So Trena, tell us a little bit about the new edition of your book.
Yeah, so ours is a new edition, yet also a new book. And what happened there was that we moved our book from Sage UK to Sage US. And while we collaborated with Paul Dempster in the UK on the first book, which was Digital Tools for Qualitative Research, Jessica and I were the co-authors for the new iteration. And probably the main difference that you can kind of tell in the title is that the first edition was really focusing on the tools, and we did not have as much space to talk about research design and
Mm-hmm.
methodology. So for
Mm-hmm.
this one, we really wanted to highlight and strengthen and expand it as sort of an introductory qualitative text that
Mm-hmm.
foregrounds the methods supported with
Right.
the different digital tools and spaces. So that was one of the big changes. So it's much longer, much more robust and comprehensive. And we also were kind of focusing on this idea of digital research workflows. I think on the next slide, there might be a picture of the first edition. Yeah, so even though we did, in the first edition, we talked a lot about using digital tools across the whole research process. And that was kind of the graphic that we used in that one. We really wanted to look at it as a comprehensive workflow, that when you're doing a research
Mm-hmm.
design, different digital tools and spaces are going to fit in different parts of the process, but you really have to think about it all as part of research design. And I think on the next slide, I just give a little example there. For example, an example of a literature review workflow. So a very early phase in the research process, that what you have to think about is all the digital tools and spaces that you might want to insert in those 4 phases of the process. So those are some of the highlights of how we sort of reframed in our thinking about this new edition.
I think with both of these books, with the expansion that you made with your new edition, and with the emphasis in mind that, someone who wanted to use these books in an instructional capacity, or someone who was, looking for a book that really covers the whole range of topics, that the books are quite comprehensive in terms of design, theory, and practice, and the practical steps involved with selecting and using technology in your study.
Yes, absolutely. I think they're very, very complementary. And I really admire the degree of specificity in terms of the guidance that you're able to provide. I'll just give a shout out. I just love your chapter 9, which I feel like I just have to get in there, which is about how you prepare before interacting with your participants. And I have to say, I get so many questions about that, but exactly how do you do it? And I don't know that ours has that level of guidance. And so that's a great example of where I would refer people to here, take a look at chapter 9, at least, if not the whole book. So I think that there's a lot of really great back and forth between the 2 books.
Well, we hope that if you're watching this video, you'll find these books to be useful, either in the work you're doing to design your own studies, whether you're an experienced researcher now tackling online environment, or a student researcher who is starting from the beginning, or a faculty member or dissertation supervisor working with students.